What's up, guys? It's Evo with Sick Critic, and today I'm joined by our very own David Fraley, Public Relations Manager and Reviewer for the site, as well as one of our contributors, Youngblood. Today we're going to dive into some of the most interesting news over the past few days and weeks that kind of rocked the industry, some of which is pretty exciting, and a few announcements that kind of shocked or disappointed us as well. So let's get into it. David, the announcement that EA is shutting down Visceral Games, the developers behind the popular Dead Space series, is kind of a surprise to me and a lot of the gaming community as well. What are your thoughts on this sudden move and how this might impact some of the employees over at Visceral?
Dude, I have to say that I'm extremely heartbroken by this because I was a huge fan of all the Dead Space games. And just it kind of just shocks you. It's like one of those things you pull up on Twitter and all of a sudden it's like out of nowhere, boom, Visceral is being closed by EA, and you're like, no. But I was talking to one of my buddies about it, and I said I don't think this is going to be the last time we hear from Visceral. What I think is going to happen, and what I hope happens, is that they stay together. They try to get the rights, buy it, whatever, from EA, the rights to Dead Space, and crowdfund another Dead Space game. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that happening. The biggest thing that I can see, because I know they were bringing on Amy Hennig, that she's popular for doing the storylines for Uncharted and all that.
Yeah.
And I even saw an update today that she probably is no longer going to be involved with the project at all. And so, I mean, they're completely shifting gears. And it looks like they were really focused on how the game was going to be perceived by the players. And it was going in a very linear fashion. And the way they kind of worded it, coming from, Patrick Soderlund, he's the executive VP EA Worldwide Studios. He's like, in its current form, is shaping up to be a story-based linear adventure game, and throughout the process, they were testing the concept, listening to feedback, and sounds like they want to do a fundamental shift because the marketplace isn't kind of going for that. So to me, that screams open world, and I know we've been flooded with a bunch of open world games here lately, and me personally, I would love to see an open world Star Wars game, but I do like the old school linear fashion that they used to have. So, I mean, I don't really know what their plans are, but that's just kind of what it sounds like to me.
So I would be totally okay if they went open world because, I mean, just open world in the Star Wars universe just sounds badass to me. And what I think they should do is they should take the same type of I don't know what you want to call it, chemistry, whatever, that Bungie's got doing with Destiny and apply that.
Yeah.
That would be sweet. Could you imagine just walking around act like with a Jedi or whatever, sudden public event drops and all these stormtroopers drop? Dude, that'd be sick.
Yeah, I mean, it would. And the big thing to me is the visuals for this game look absolutely out of this world. And people are super excited for it. And I don't know, this news is just kind of shocking, but where my biggest concern lies, and we were talking about how Visceral is shutting down, is what's going to happen to the people who have been working on I mean, they practically just took the game away from Visceral, and they're moving it to another one of EA Studios, and they're ramping down and closing down Visceral. So I know they're moving a few of the EA employees to different branches within the studio, but some people are getting laid off. Just kind of think of the impact. I mean, you've been working on this game for, God knows how long it's been in development for, and they're like, well, sorry guys, we don't like how this is going. I know you've been working on it, but you're not working on it anymore. I wouldn't even know what to do.
Well, and the shitty thing about it is that this happens a lot, and I think it happens more often than people realize. And we only ever hear about it when it's a big name developer, like Visceral or oh god, was it Avalanche Studios or one of the Avalanche Studios, got broken up too, and it's whoa, what are they doing, But yeah, it's this type of thing happens a lot, and that's why it's really, really hard to work in the gaming industry because, if you're, for whatever reason, your product's not up to point with your publisher or whatever, they could just be like, yeah, so we're going to scrap this game, and we understand you guys have been putting your work into this or anything, but now, we own the rights to it, and it's over now. You can't even continue working on this.
Yeah, and back to Amy Hennig, and they were making this big deal like, oh, Amy Hennig, she's coming to work on the Star Wars game. It's going to be spiritually similar, to Uncharted as far as storyline goes. It's like, we don't like this, and she's gone. So I mean, I don't know what to expect, and I know it was due to come out in 2019's fiscal year, which is from like April 2018 to like March 2019, something like that. And now they're pushing it back, so we have no idea. It could be 2020, it could be 2021. They could be completely, redoing the game. So as far as the new Star Wars game is, concerned, and we're not talking about Battlefront, I have no idea. Completely out in the dark here.
Well, now don't forget too, as far as Star Wars games go, we also have Respawn working on one too.
That is true.
So they've got a couple Star Wars games. I forget who all's working on. They have got like another probably 2 developers or whatever working on Star Wars titles, because EA's got like some sort of contract with Disney for X amount of years for the license or whatever. So yeah, we've got some other ones in the works. So we still have stuff to look forward to, and even Battlefront 2 comes out this. When does it come out? It's come out like November or something.
I believe it's November, yeah.
Yeah. So we still have that to look forward to, and that's still looking absolutely incredible. So it sucks to hear it, but it's not like Star Wars is going away.
It'll be there, and to everyone out there at Visceral, I mean, hopefully they find somewhere to land. I'm sure they're pretty talented people. But okay, we'll switch gears real quick, and we'll move on to something I know you're excited to talk about: the Lawbreakers All-Star update, which is going to be bringing in ranked competitive play, and that comes out tomorrow. Is that correct?
Yes. And I am just beyond excited for this, because this game has been kind of faltering a little bit, and I know to some people they're like, oh, that's putting it lightly, but I still have faith in this game. And I think that with them dropping this competitive mode, I really think that that's gonna bring people in, because it's like before, when they dropped it and it was, whatever you want to call it, vanilla Lawbreakers, it was awesome. It was something new. It was something fresh. They had different modes and everything, but then it was like, okay, well, you keep doing this over and over and over again, and it does kind of start, it's like, rinse and repeat. Like it is very samey, and they didn't give anybody, anything to really fight towards, where it's like with this, it's like, nope, now we're giving you guys new Lawbreakers skins and everything for your weapons and your gear. We're giving you a brand new map to play stuff on, and like it's ranked mode now. So it's like, this is huge. We're giving you guys something to work towards, and I hope they take the same stance as far as like what Rocket League's doing, where it's like Rocket League, they've got certain events going on all the time, and they're constantly giving people stuff to play towards and to unlock and to, put money towards, and that's why they're doing so good. And I think if they can take that same, whatever you want to call it, approach to their game and everything, and put it towards Lawbreakers, they're golden.
Yeah, and that was my biggest issue with it as well. I mean, because I absolutely love the game, and it's a fresh perspective on a multiplayer FPS that I wasn't necessarily used to, and me being the big Cliffy B fan that I am, and back in my Gears of War days, playing on the circuit and things like that, playing that game, it feels like I'm right in my comfort zone where I want to be for an FPS, and I absolutely love it. And it's super disappointing to hear that the concurrent player base for today on Steam was 24 people with a daily high of 73, and PC Gamers coming out and saying it's the best multiplayer FPS you probably aren't playing. And it just blows my mind that the game is very well made. The pacing is perfect if you like that fast pace, kind of getting the action kind of game that's just not out there right now, and nobody's playing it. And they had a bit of a spike when they did their free play weekend back last month, and as soon as the free play's gone, the player base kind of went away again. So are they going to have to move to a free to play game? I don't know. I don't know what they do from here to actually build that player base. But I'm hoping that bringing in a ranked, aspect to Lawbreakers, it will actually get people more excited to get into it. Because I mean, me and you play games together, and we're like, you're just playing that repetitive game, and you don't really have a goal to reach for. And bringing in, I don't know if they plan on doing an elo system or how they look about doing it, but having a ranked aspect to it, I think can only help it from here.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Um, yeah, it's like that's one of the things that's just completely blown my mind about this entire thing, because it's like, if you look at all the reviews that it's gotten, they've been pretty decently high. They're 7s and 8s. When I reviewed it for Sit Critic, I gave it a 9.5. I'm like, this game's fantastic. Why aren't more people playing it? It's they've the only reason why I didn't give it a 10 was because it had some balancing issues when it first released. But I mean, they've been working on those. They're still working on those. They're constantly releasing updates for it. They're very transparent as to what they're working on and what's coming out. They're just it's just such a freaking awesome game. And the fact too, it's $30. It's 50% off what a normal game costs. I mean, if you look at some of these more popular games like Siege was $60 when that dropped. You look at Overwatch was $60 when that dropped. It's like, these games that are completely multiplayer based were more than this game is, and they're doing fantastic. Mm-hmm. And this game is tanking for some reason. It's like, I can't even wrap my head around it.
And I don't know if it's more where people just haven't tried the game, and a lot of this negativity, out in the media and, people through Steam and stuff like that, I felt like it's kind of built up. So now people have this perspective about Lawbreakers. They're like, don't play it. Nobody's playing it. Well, it's definitely worth the time to check out. And like you were saying, it's $29.99. Like, yeah. It's $30 for a great FPS game. It's probably, out of all the FPS games you can go buy right now on a console, I would say at least. I mean, PC has some more options, but for a console, I mean, you really can't beat it. And it kind of blows my mind as well. I don't really know why it's got such a low player base, and I'm hoping that this update will kind of change that, because for me, it's kind of hard to jump into the game when I have no one to play against. And
oh yeah,
you know how we are super gung-ho competitive. So
well, and the thing is like, I've jumped in there a couple times, since the main reason why I kind of fell, because of Destiny 2 came out, and I was doing the review and everything for that. But like, I've jumped in even after having played that, and it's like, the thing that's killing me the most is the wait times. You're sitting in these lobbies and you're waiting 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. By that point, it's like, I could have jumped in and played another game and literally jumped right into it. Whereas like, this game is like, I want to play it, but I don't want to sit here for a half hour or more waiting to get into a game, And it's just, and I think the main reason like that caused that was and is the low player base, which sucks. It's like, you can do all you want, the networking, put people, into matches quicker and everything, but if you don't have the player base, you're still gonna sit there and wait. So I mean, I'm doing as much as I possibly can to get this game out there, get their name out there, share their stuff, tell people, hey, like, listen, you gotta play it. If I gotta share play that freaking game with other people that I'm friends with, I will. I'm not even joking you. Like, I will do it. I will probably end up getting to a point where I'm like, listen, if you just play this game with me for like even 10 hours, like, I will buy the game for you.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this kind of changes things. I'm definitely looking forward to it. I know for a fact you are. So.
Oh, you have no
now
idea.
Into some controversial news here, and I know everybody in the gaming sphere has heard about this. Naughty Dog, a former employee, says he was fired after filing sexual harassment complaints. Yeah. Here's my take on that. And if you're not, caught up with what's going on, there was a former employee of Naughty Dog Studios, which is behind The Last of Us. They're behind Crash Bandicoot. They're behind Uncharted, some of the best games to ever come out. this former employee, and I believe he was a environmental artist.
Yeah, that
I
sounds about right.
could be mistaken, I'm not sure. Said he filed a complaint that he was sexually harassed by someone else at the studio. Now, the discrepancy is Naughty Dog says they have zero record of the allegations, and even with conversations from current and former employees, they said they weren't aware of the situation. Now, that doesn't excuse anything. You know, if there was proof that this sexual harassment happened, you obviously fire the guy who was involved. Obviously, you have to part ways with that. But, I mean, he states, quote, in late 2015, I was sexually harassed at Naughty Dog by a lead, unquote. Quote, my work environment became extremely toxic afterward. In February 2016, I had a mental breakdown at work, and Sony PlayStation HR became involved. When I told them that about the harassment, they ended the call and fired me the next day. Decided the company was moving in a different direction and my job was no longer needed. They tried to silence me by offering $20,000 if I signed a letter agreeing to the termination, as well as not to discuss it with anyone. I declined to sign, and I have been unemployed for 17 months since. David.
Yeah.
$20,000. I mean, I don't see a reputable, one of the most distinguished studios in the world offering someone a $20,000 silence fee. Me personally, I don't see it.
I don't either. And the fact too that they're gonna fire him the very next day after he, makes this claim that he's been sexually violated. And I'm not saying that he was or that he wasn't. It's just everything that's come out about it has sounded very fishy to me. Like I said, Sony and Naughty Dog are not ones to go, we're going to fire you the very next day after you make this claim because you're, and then lie to you about it and say that your position is no longer needed. You're a lead environmental, specialist or whatever. Your position's never not needed, and especially with the games that Naughty Dog's made, Uncharted and Last of Us being some of the better, graphically looking games that have ever graced consoles. Like, that job is for sure needed. So I don't know. I'm still having a hard time coming to grips with the fact that they would do that. And I don't know if I was talking to you about this before, because I know we had talked a little bit about it when it first broke, or if it was somebody else. But I was like, usually if they come out and they say, oh, he's made these, sexual harassment allegations or whatever, but we haven't heard really anything about it. Like, he never made a complaint to us like he said he did. I don't think they're gonna sit back and lie about that. Like, they more than likely have not heard anything, and he more than likely has not come to them and said, hey, this is sexual harassment. And I don't know about you, if you, I forget who wrote it, I think it might have been GameSpot. If you look more into the article, he left Naughty Dog after X amount of years, and then he went and worked somewhere else, and then he went back, which also seems very fishy to me, because I don't know about you, anytime you've ever heard in Hollywood or whatever that somebody over there has been sexually harassed, chances are they're not going to go back to that place or back to that person and do business with them.
Yeah. Well, I think it was two separate occasions. From what I understand, there was no sexual harassment claims in his prior workplace with Naughty Dog before he switched over. He's saying it happened after the fact. But like we were discussing, Sony and Naughty Dog would not come out together in a public statement saying there is no evidence that we received any allegations from Mr. Ballard that he was harassed in any way at Naughty Dog or Sony. So as a company, I mean, you got to think about this as a liability factor here. If they put in a HR request saying there was sexual harassment, you have to investigate the issue, and Naughty Dog is well known for tackling sexual harassment, and it's zero tolerance there. You will be fired immediately. And if both of them are coming out and saying, look, we have zero record of him ever coming forth and saying this had happened, and if you do not take advantage of the resources that these companies put in place for sexual harassment and go to the proper steps to report that to HR and take care of the problem, then the company is not liable. you know, if this happened, you have to investigate it. I mean, obviously, I'm sure they're going to look into it, but they wouldn't come out and say, look, we have no record of it if they didn't have record of it. That would just
Oh
be
yeah.
reckless from a PR standpoint, from a business standpoint, and you literally, the
Yeah,
backlash
nightmare.
you would get from doing that sort of thing is mind-blowing. So if they're coming out and saying that, in my opinion, what kind of is the trigger point for me is employees and even him coming out and admitting that he had a mental breakdown while he was at the studio. And everyone knows that, you know, video game development is a very high pressure, high stress job, and there's very tight deadlines, and sometimes they're there all week for multiple hours, and these guys are not getting the proper sleep for all the work that they do. And to me, it sounds like guy had a mental breakdown, was becoming either possibly a hazard to other employees there or becoming a distraction to where he couldn't do his job. He got fired for it, and this is sort of some backlash from him. Now, hate me if you want for saying that. That's just my personal perspective. I don't think Naughty Dog and Sony would come out saying that if it was something else. And I could be wrong. You know, I say this, you know, because sexual harassment should not be tolerated in any workplace whatsoever on any circumstance. If there was any proof of that, I pray to God that they actually look into it and you know, take the proper steps to make sure that never gets to work at a studio ever again. But to me, you got to look at the facts, and to me, it's pointing to someone trying to come out and get back at a studio that he was fired from. That's just me.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is I think in the coming months, because I do feel like somebody's gonna do some investigations. Like, they may not come out and say it, but I'm sure that Sony and Naughty Dog together are going to be doing some investigations on this and making sure that they've got all their bases covered, so that this guy doesn't have anything to even attempt to like try to take them to court over or anything like that. And I think more of this story is going to break out as, you know, time goes on, and we're going to end up getting eventually the full story.
Yeah, it was a very generic response coming out, just like, hey, we don't have any proof of this. So I'm sure they are going to kind of look into it, and we probably will hear more. This definitely isn't the end of this, but the guy who made these allegations, he did it on social media. He came out on, I think first he came out on Facebook, or it might have been Twitter, vice versa, whichever he came out on first, and said this had happened, and it got all this traction, because you know how Twitter is, man. You put something out there, especially if you're a well-known person, it just blows up. And to me, if this had happened, you probably would have reported it. And I'm sorry if it did happen, but you should have reported it. That's why those things are in place. That's why those procedures are there, so you can protect your employees and make sure that these things aren't happening. And, you know, I think the moral of the story is, if this was happening, and if you're listening to this right now, and if there's ever any sexual harassment going on at your workplace, make sure you let the people in charge of the HR department know what's going on. Make sure you take a firm stance to make sure it stops from happening, and kind of speak up, and don't wait till after the fact to do so. If by God's chance that Ballard is correct, and Naughty Dog and Sony are completely disregarding that, and the allegations are true, then they're probably in a world of hurt. And we'll probably find out more about that if that's the case. If not, I kind of see this hushing down. But
yeah, it's, you know, and I want to reiterate to exactly what you said. It was like, you know, the sexual harassment is not okay. Doesn't matter which way you spin it. It's a terrible thing to do. And if you're the one that's, you know, doing the sexual harassing, you need to stop. You need to see somebody. You need to get some help, get something figured out, because that's not okay to do. And it seems like that's been one of the big things that's been hitting the news a lot lately. It's just kind of one of those things, especially us as gamers, when it happens in Hollywood, you're kind of like, oh, you know, thing that's jumped out about some more sexual harassment allegations, you know, is just kind of commonplace. But then it's like being in the gaming industry, when you hear it happening, you know, allegedly at a developer that everybody knows about and is super well known, you're like, oh crap, okay, let's take a step back here, you know. Yeah, it's just kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, well, I hope they get that figured out.
Yeah, me too.
One more thing I kind of want to bring up here. I know this is, in an overall kind of manner of speaking, this is kind of big in the news as the underlying message here, but I know a lot of people have been playing Shadow of War. You know, came out critical success, you know, 8s and 9s across the board. But everyone is in an uproar about the loot boxes. I mean, have you heard about the loot boxes that in Shadow of War?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I
I've heard
mean,
a lot of people are not happy
I
about them
just,
at all.
I don't understand that. I mean, why do you need loot boxes in a single player game?
It's because they're just trying to get more money for it. It's just a case of, okay, people have spent, 60, 80, $90, whatever, for the deluxe and gold editions or whatever. Now we're going to start throwing out loot boxes just to get more money, so that, and I don't know if they have any like DLC planned for the game, for like later on or anything, but that might help, fuel giving them some DLC to do later on.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people pointed out that you don't need the loot boxes in order to complete the game or to enjoy the game, but to me, it's just like, when are these microtransactions going to stop? Because, I mean, this isn't really the topic of Shadow War for me, it's more of like the overall discussion of microtransactions, and they are flooding the gaming industry. And it's getting to a point where it's ridiculous, to where every single game you pull up, it's like, hey, spend so and so money and you get this. Well, in a single player game, when you can get, from what I'm understanding, you can get a loot box and you can get, an orc out of that loot box. You didn't have to do any of the things that you normally would do, like in Shadow of Mordor. You don't get any of the dialogue. You don't get to build up that relationship with that orc and get him to fight by your side. He's just like there. And people can spend all this money and get these powerful orcs to fight with them, and it takes away an overall base of the game that I think you need to experience as a player. And there's always going to be those people who don't want to go and do all the stuff. I mean, that's perfectly fine, but I don't think you need to make it a monetary thing to give someone the option to do that kind of stuff. Maybe just if you complete certain objectives within the game, you get these points to unlock loot boxes that might give you some cool stuff that you might not normally have. But the fact that you're making it a monetary valued thing for a single player game is just outrageous to me.
Well, and I had heard, and I haven't played the game or anything, so I take this with a grain of salt. I heard that, like, if you buy the loot boxes that they offer, you actually get better stuff and stuff that you can only get in those loot boxes that you wouldn't otherwise normally get, which I also think is, and excuse my French on this, but a bunch of horse shit. Because if you look at games that do microtransactions properly, and I'm going to be biased and I'm going to say Rocket League, they do it in a fair manner. It is, so you're definitely not going to have, like, the loot boxes in Rocket League, you don't have to buy those, okay? You can if you want, but it doesn't, like, make your car better. It doesn't improve the, your boost or your flying skills or anything. Like, everything that you get is just straight cosmetic. And that's what I like. And that's why I also like the fact that Lawbreakers did the exact same thing. You don't have to buy their stuff. It's just if you want your character to look nice. But that goes into a whole other topic that got brought up, and we can talk about that at a later date. But I like when it's just cosmetic items. If it starts changing the way the game handles and the way the game plays, I think it was Battlefield 3 that did this, where you could pay to unlock some of the better guns sooner, and that pissed me off because it took forever to get those guns unlocked just by grinding the game. And so you'd have this, like, 12-year-old rich kid that's got fucking the best gun in the game, and he's sniping you across the map because the range on it is fantastic, and he's got some weird thing on it where no bullet dropping. You're just like, okay, well, I obviously can't contend with that. So
yeah. Well, I mean, you bring up a good point, because I completely agree with you there that with microtransactions, if it's through cosmetics, like let's say League of Legends, which is a complete free-to-play game, and they make good money, but the way they do it is they have very unique skins, emotes, and customizables that give players a way to kind of make their own unique, I guess, version of what they want to be. And they have it even through CS:GO and other things like that. And when it becomes a problem, like you said, is when you're able to buy things that will enhance your gameplay. And I guess for a single player game, it's not that big of a deal, but in a multiplayer game, it can make a huge difference. And I think you're referring to Battlefield 3 when they did that, and that was having a huge impact on the actual game. This won't impact anyone else except for the person playing the game. And my message to them would be just experience it, man. I mean, you've been waiting for a few years for this game to come out, and I'm sorry, but is it Monolith Studios that's making this game?
I believe so, yeah.
Don't give them another dime of your money. Like, you spent $60 to play a game, and that's what it should cost. And you don't need to sit there and spend money to get a stupid orc that you could probably get there out, playing the game anyway, to get like a cooler sword that might be more powerful, or I'm not sure, I haven't played the game. But from what I'm reading, it's kind of ruining players' experience, and that's why we're in this business, is for the experience and, the artistic value and all the things that you get from playing a video game, and that just kind of tarnishes it, in my perspective, but I digress.
No, and you're totally right. Like, it ruins the experience when you're spending more time trying to make sure, oh, I gotta buy this, I gotta buy that, and it's like, okay, listen, like, you already spent $60 on the game, just play the game, it's not like you're not gonna be able to beat it with, without having to spend the money or whatever, because you are. They wouldn't do that, and if they did, that's even shittier, because it's like, then you're paying for half of a game. Yeah. It's like, if you're, and I'm sure, they're not listening, but for any developers that might be listening, like, don't do that. Like, if you're going to put any sort of microtransactions in your game, just keep it strictly to cosmetic items. Don't start adding stuff that dramatically changes the way the game plays, or, makes your experience, because you spent money, way better than somebody who didn't, and it puts you in a higher podium or whatever than they are. Just keep the games the same. Don't be messing with them.
Well, that's it from us as Sick Critics. Stay tuned for more information on breaking news within the games industry at sickcritic.com. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow us on our Twitter and Facebook, which you will find in the description below. Remember, stay sick. Peace.